Stop asking if someone used AI to create that proposal. That's not the question that matters. I'm Ryan Kohler, and this is the Future of Work with AI, where we explore how artificial intelligence is transforming work. And today we're diving into something most leaders are getting completely wrong. They're so focused on implementing AI tools that they've forgotten to ask the most important question of all: why would anyone actually want to use them? Chris Donaleski, founder of AI Advisory Group, just spent the last year discovering something that should terrify every business leader. He's been helping organizations with AI strategy and operational efficiency, and he's watching deal after deal stall out. Not because the technology doesn't work, but because leadership is approaching this entire transformation backwards. We're in the first era of technology adoption where the best implementations are completely invisible. When your competitor started using tractors, you could see them using tractors. When they built a website, you could visit their website. But when they implement AI correctly, you have no idea they're using it because it works like a human. Chris is going to reveal why companies are paying their employees to stay home and do nothing rather than figuring out how to redeploy them strategically. Why we've created a tribal mentality around AI that's more about picking sides than solving problems. And why the question, did you use AI for that, is the wrong question entirely. We're exploring the psychological safety crisis that nobody's talking about. How AI adoption is dropping employees down Maslow's hierarchy of needs without anyone realizing it. Why asking, why would my employees want this, will save you from every implementation disaster. And how the companies winning at AI are keeping it secret because it's their competitive advantage. Ready to stop implementing AI tools and start implementing AI transformation? Let's dive in.
Well, maybe that's probably a good point, I think, as far as on us having a chat, because I think
Okay.
like and clearly, well, I'd like to be opportunistic or positive and say, oh, this is only going to last a short period of time and we're going to make it through the gap. What is it? The Seth Godin has this gap thing that's like, you decide you want to do something, you better decide you want like to climb the hill because there's going to be this
Yes.
gap of time
Yes.
where it's going to suck. Like it just
Yeah.
there is no easy and when you bring a new technology into the mix, and especially if that technology potentially threatens people subconsciously,
Sure.
threatens people consciously, like if they don't understand it, if there's a bunch of like weirdness about it, like there's going to be a learning curve from and maybe it's not just the learning curve, it's like the implementation curve of
Yeah.
like getting from, hey, we got my team would always used to say with like we got slow down, speed up.
For sure.
You're gonna have to slow down and you're gonna have to like rebuild some stuff. And so that's probably a good topic to talk about because I do think like that honesty is not what's being said.
No, it's not. 100% it's not. Because
Yeah.
everybody, it's like there's like I always say that right now I'm sensing two things in with AI. Either they're impressed, or they're scared. And the scared is not what you think. It's typically a scared is the fear of missing out.
Mm.
And that is driving so many things right now. So when you say I'm using AI, it's like, oh, wait a minute, I don't trust this because you're using AI, or I'm impressed because you're using AI. But we have to get into the reality that you don't go into a business right now thinking or asking, hey, do you guys use electricity? Do you guys use laptops? Because at some point in the next 3 to 5 years, maybe even sooner than that, every company is going to be AI company, but not every company is going to be much more. And so we have to
Yeah.
understand what makes that unique. What's that UVP, right, within your company? And it can't be AI.
Yeah, so let's dig into that because I think that's probably one of the most interesting things, right? Is like this idea of did you use AI for that? I think I saw a LinkedIn post yesterday, and somebody read the post and their comment, which could have also been AI. The post could have been AI, don't know.
Sure, sure.
And honestly, when I read a post, which is funny because I write a bunch of AI stuff and I write non-AI stuff,
Yeah.
that is not the first question in my head. Like the first question was, is this a good post?
Yes.
And when I read a comment, I don't go, I wonder if that was AI. But literally, the comment was, oh, that's a great insight. Did you write it with AI? And I was like, why do you care? Like, just stop with that first thing. That was a great insight. Now,
Yes.
step number two, add some more value to it. Why don't you give an insight back? But like you said, you don't say, did you use electricity? I think the better one would be like if somebody, sent you a proposal in the mail right now.
Yeah.
I don't remember ever going, did somebody stop and be like, did you use Microsoft Word to make that or did you use a typewriter? Nobody
100%.
cared.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
It's a
nobody gave a
tool.
shit at all about what you used to create it.
Yes.
You looked at the proposal and said this was good or this was bad.
Yeah.
But right now we're in this weird, like this very weird, chaotic time of because AI is so most implementation is under the hood in an org, you don't know if your competitors are using it or not. You don't know if your suppliers using it or not. You don't know if the person on the Instagram used AI or not. And I think going back to it, like a lot of the fear right now, it's a whole bunch of weird fear, right?
It is. I mean, fear is always I mean, fear is made up, right? I mean,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, fear it's all in the mind. And when we think about like it's so like the M dash that blew my mind when like that became the single identifier that people used to think if it was AI or not. When it's been around for ages. I read tons of books and there's M dashes on there. I guarantee you they were not AI that wrote them. But we've identified with that. So now you have people that are grammatically correct and writing with M dashes, taking M dashes out of their writing so people do not misplace, oh, they used AI and putting that negative connotation on them. It's so bonkers.
So do you think this is like a human society, like psychological thing going on right now, where it's like I think people aren't sure which which side of the because we as a society are very like pro and con on
Sure.
everything. Like
Very
pick
black and
one.
white. Yeah.
Yeah, we are very much like this is a battlefield. Decide which side you're on and let's battle it out. And in almost every situation, like literally grab a news article and by
Sure.
default, if you read it to somebody, they're going to be instantly like, am I on the right or left, or the yes or no, or the one or zero on this thing? But clearly, we couldn't just sit down and chat about it. We're looking for it's. I think Seth Godin has this tribes book, and he's talking about how we become very tribal. And so at this
Yeah.
point, everything becomes a, am I in the right tribe or the left tribe?
Sure.
And
Well,
so I,
we're
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, we are very social. We're social creatures, right? And
Yeah.
so there's a tendency to navigate to um what is comfortable,
Okay.
what is relative to your kind of core values, if you will. And when we talk about like culture and HR, that is something that I always it's like with AI and culture, it's like, well, define what that means. You ask 10 different people, you're gonna get 10 different answers. At the end of the day, AI is a tool, AI is an accelerator, and you could define culture as the core beliefs and values and mission of a group of people. And so what that actually means. And so when we look at like, is it a psychology thing? Is it psychology? Is it psychological? Yes, it's always psychological. That's the key. It is absolutely always psychological. Now we have to understand, okay, but what does that mean? I love definitions. I think defining things is something that is kind of a lost art. We don't, as a society, tend to define things. If you say one group of people is this, and or you take an assessment on for a job applicant, or even within your, and I do these like we do these with companies, and so for me to say this, I think is actually really important for me to say this that I work with assessments for companies to help them, but I also make sure that this is not a bucket system that defines those group of people. It is a data set that allows us to add value. And so, from a psychological thing, when we think about like why people group into certain tribes, if you will, like you were talking about, yeah, I think that we have to go back to the hierarchical of needs, right? The Maslow's hierarchical of needs. And when you start to think about, Google did this study. They spent like $20 million on this study, and I think it was called Project Aristotle. And what they did was they said, look, we want to understand what makes teams successful, what makes high performing teams. And it wasn't all these other things that you would think about. It wasn't the type of people. It wasn't even diversity of people. It wasn't how much they made. It wasn't the company. It wasn't the culture. It was psychological safety. That was the number one reason that made good, successful, high performing teams was a high level of psychological safety. And so when we think about what does this mean, people want certainty. And so when we think about fear of AI, what they're really asking for when they're fearing something is, well, they want to be certain of those things. And so I think that's really interesting to kind of a thread to pull, because it's like, well, what is fear? Where is fear? And how do you get rid of fear? It's typically having more certainty of it.
Yeah, and I think you could, like, if you've read any news and you've been around AI at all, you could easily go, oh, well, and we going back to that defining thing, we as humans
Yeah,
love to define things because it's like our shortcut. It's like, oh, cool. Once I've defined
100%.
you, once I've defined the situation, once I've defined whatever, I don't need to dig in any deeper. I've thrown it in a box and I'm using my belief system around that box of how it will operate and how I can predict it because it probably does give me a level of safety. If I know you're a threat, then I treat you like a threat and I know how to act. And if I know you're a friend and if I know you're whatever, right? And so when we say like it's fear, most people's knee-jerk reaction to AI equals fear is it's going to replace me. And that is
Sure,
part of it, 100%.
sure.
But it really is most likely like, well, I think that's a little too generic. If you're
I do
talking about
too.
an individual employee, it's
Yeah.
what will my life look like at work after this? I don't believe the average person thinks, oh, this is going to take my job. I think that if they're smart and mature, they're saying this is going to change my job, but I don't know how it's going to change it. And so that
Yeah, I would
obviously
agree
is
with
an
that.
unknown, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think I'd go even a little further and say that the fear of replacement, there is trade-offs. There's always trade-offs. Every decision requires a trade-off.
Right.
You can't make two decisions for one thing. Like it has to be you have to decide. It's to be left or right, up or down, black or white.
Right.
Like there can't be like
No.
even if your answer is gray, you still can't like do both, right? Like it has to be one answer. So the question then becomes not if I am being replaced, but what am I replacing? Because I think that provides clarity. There's a 5D process that I like to follow. It's you start with destination, so obviously you know where you're going, get that mission, get that alignment. Um, Define is number three, but before define is discovery. And the reason why discovery is so important to be before define is because you're right. We have a tendency to go fight or flight. You know, it's either a threat or it's not. It takes what less than a second for someone to feel if they trust somebody when they first meet them, the first impressions, right? So this idea of like you make all these little small decisions really quickly and you define things super quick. But what if we were to stay curious and hold off on making those decisions first? Let's learn some more about it. Let's get a little more certain about what we actually are defining before we define it. But I think, you know, we don't think about when we eat that, hey, what we're eating right now, someone maybe not is not eating because I get to eat. I'm going to my job because maybe someone got fired or let go, or you know, right. There's all these different things that we can say. Wait, why is it that? And I'm not trying to make it as a comparison thing of like better versus non, right? Like it's not this idea, but that there's just, but there is this like this idea that some you were replacing something every time you do something else. There's a trade-off that you didn't choose, and someone else now has an opportunity to choose that thing. And I think that broadly, when you look at that level, it's a little bit more focused on like how you are part of the picture as a whole, and it's not just looking at you as this individual. Because I think that when we start looking at ourselves, it's like we get very egotistical, we get very selfish, and it's easy to say, "Well, wait a second, why does this happen to me?" Or "Why can't I do this?" And we get into this victim mentality when really, at the end of the day, there's a lot of factors at play. And Malcolm Gladwell, I love his books. I love the way he threads his stories throughout. But he talks about this in Outliers. He talks about how that you know the top performers, and he talked about violinists, he talks about hockey players, but he talks about all these people that have hit the top of their careers in that certain field. What has made them actually successful is not their ability or their talent. It is all these kind of hidden things that come up, the opportunities they had, the people that were surrounding, the year or month they were born in had something to do with it. Like
Right.
it's a lot of these things that we don't think about, and it's all these hidden frameworks I think that really exist that exist that we just don't see.
Right. So I want to pivot a little bit because I think there's more, like if we peel back I think it's easy to talk about the worker.
Sure.
And there's a lot of talk in that of like, why are they adopting or they should be adopting it. And to be honest, like I would say if you're an organization, let's say with more than 20 employees, you have most likely no clue what adoption looks like in your organization.
Sure.
Like
Sure.
literally no clue.
No,
Because
there's no
yeah.
metrics. There's
There's no
nothing.
metrics. ChatGPT, like Spurred and Claude and Grok and Gemini, they're all copying the same thing. And it
Sure.
spurred from an individual use case chat concept. Like if you look at even the interface is
Hmm.
designed to look more like iMessage
Yeah.
than to look like Google.
Yep.
And by definition, when the team built that, and I don't think they did it on purpose, but maybe they did, but it is a very iMessage is personal to me. You don't read my messages. I read my messages. So they built this amazing business platform based off of it corralling all of my personal information that my interactions where you can't see it.
Yeah.
And that's great if you're going to release this to a bunch of one-off solopreneurs, but
Yeah.
you release it inside of corporate America and they, number one, like you don't know what your team's doing with it. You have no way to see what they're doing with it unless they show you. And when they leave, they take it with them, which is a huge thing. But I think we get hung up on this like it's fear holding back usage of generative AI right now. And I don't think it is. I think it's leadership. Like there is fear, 100% of like what comes
Sure.
next. Do I have clarity and do I know what my job will look like? But most employees aren't going to define those things on their own because they can't. But managers have their own fear. What will my team look like if they're using this? Will they mess something up? Are we going to be at risk? Is it going to leak our information? Or how will I guide my team using something that I don't know? That's, I think, one of the biggest like unspoke about fears for managers right now with generative AI is like, how will I guide my team to use a tool that I don't even understand myself?
Sure. Sure.
And then you have organizational fear, which is like what you brought up, like FOMO. Are we missing out? Are we behind the curve? Like, are our competitors going to beat us to this? And then on the other side, like, is this going to be a waste of time? Are we going to blow a bunch of money and energy and get nowhere? And like,
Probably.
hey, we've got to allocate our team's crazy busy.
Yes.
We got to allocate time to figure out this new thing, and that's going to put us
Yeah.
behind. Like, it's a mess,
I
leadership
know.
wise. I'm guessing you have an opinion on this, I'm sure, but also are seeing similar thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. It's interesting because when you think about what the managers versus the workers and like the dynamics of like teams and machines and this, I think there's a couple things. So and you touched on quite a few. So I'm going to you might have to jog my memory because let's start with one. So the first one is I think it's really interesting that when you have a technology that comes in, like you said, that it's how do you then how understand the impact of something you actually don't understand. So you have to understand something first, and then you can understand the impact. And we're kind of in reverse, right? We're understanding the impact, and it's a lot of negative impact more than anything else because people are seeing some interesting, impact, or I guess they're seeing some interesting metrics that are allowing them to be more creative in a way. And I would actually caveat that with I don't think people are getting more creative. I think people are outsourcing their thinking. And I think the creative people are becoming more efficient and the less creative people are being perceived as creative, but they're just really rehashing some of the copywritten stuff that's out there already.
Right.
So I think that's a whole different topic. I think when you start looking at teams and like what humans add to teamwork, teamwork, when we think of teamwork, we think of people. We don't think of like machines and teamwork. But I also think there's a dynamic there that is interesting because it's like, well, accountability is shifting right now. So if you have a machine, and I say I will just use machine generally, just so we know what we're talking
Right.
about. When I say machine, I'm talking about AI, automations, robotics, humanoids. I'm just going to put that all into kind of machine world right for now. And so we have a machine taking the place of a human. We're also saying we're outsourcing our decision making. We're outsourcing our task, our effort, our time. So it's not just that we're getting a little bit better at something or we're getting a little more efficient at something. It's all these things. The problem with that is though that I don't see any companies, and I could be wrong here, and I'm sure there's companies out there that are doing this well, but you don't see a lot of this happening. At least in my space, I haven't seen it yet. You don't see right now where companies are saying, "Hey, we've just automated your job, and we're going to keep you, and we're going to put you in a more strategic role that allows you to be more human." You hear that in articles. You see this in all the Forbes and HBR, magazines and articles, but you don't actually seeing it happen in the real world because what's happening is two things. They're giving them other busy work that they're doing that's not productive, or they're giving them nothing at all. You see a lot of tech companies that are actually keeping people on the books. They're paying them like ungodly amount of money just to sit there because they don't want to give them up and they don't have anything else for them to do. And they're retaining that talent in some way. But smaller companies are doing that same thing. I can't tell you how many companies I've worked with and know personally the people that have literally been probably they are able to probably do 110% of the job that they are qualified for. They're doing 20% today because the
Right.
company doesn't have the metrics, they don't have the infrastructure to allow them to understand the people that are already working for them to say, look, you know what, from a project level you would be amazing at this, from a leadership level you would be amazing at this, if I could just tweak you and give you a little more skills or a little more exposure, a little more access to data, that wow, you could just blow us out of the water. Forget AI, let's say AI never entered the picture. How many companies are underutilizing their workforce today? You talk about building capacity. Let's look at the people we already have on the books before we let them go and outsource our stuff to AI. That's going to really just stagnate the innovation of our companies. And I think that's a big, big miss right now that we're seeing right now. I think in again, we're not seeing it because of the media and the articles that are being written about the getting everybody to be kind of like, again, fearful of this takeover. But I don't think it's a takeover at all. I think we're actually misplacing our allocations, and we're gonna feel the repercussions of that.
Yeah, I think you could say, kind of, I like to go with AI as this amplifier at its base, right? At
Sure,
the very first
100%.
level, it's an amplifier, right?
Yeah,
And if you think about an amplifier, like it takes the input and it makes it bigger, louder, whatever the case may be, which
yeah,
means if you put crap into it, it's going to amplify that crap, right?
yes,
Plain and simple.
yeah,
And so
100%.
if you think about that and say, man, we wish that organizations were more dynamic, that they were more agile, that they could adjust and flow, and that they were watching what was going on, and yada yada yada. And big companies are not dynamic by definition, right? They're very structured, and we as
Yes,
humans, you know, we want to get in a groove. Let's just go with that, right?
yeah,
Safety
sure,
is a groove. It's less thought. It's more, I know what I'm doing. Success is predictable, all that kind of stuff. And so
yeah,
we're lured into getting in a groove. And when we get in a groove, then we stay in that groove. And the better we get at it, the more that it becomes like a habitual activity. And the harder
sure,
it is to change because inertia is created.
100%.
And so then as an organization, something or someone has to break the inertia. And if you've ever tried to break inertia in an organization when it is not forced, meaning there's not an outside influence, it doesn't have to change. What we're doing is good and we're progressing, but you want it to become better, but there's not a motivating factor. It is the hardest
Yep.
thing on earth.
I've been there, done that, and I could 100% attest to that. I'll give you an example. So before COVID hit, I was working in a company and was in charge of the remote inspection division. It was hard for me to get two people on a call before COVID to get them to have just some insights on like how we could use this technology. It was starting to kind of get really good. Google Glass came in, I think what, like 2015. It was
Right.
horrible. Companies just like really kind of it left a really bad taste in their mouth. So for companies to kind of say, "Hey, look, let's start over and let's figure this out," was already hard. COVID hit, and of course, I had put all these programs in place. I'm a pretty systems oriented guy, so all the processes, procedures, everything was good to go. But I couldn't get two, three people on a call. COVID hits. 75 people were on that call after we formalized and say, look, we need something. How do we continue to operate? 75 people are on that first call. And you're right. So it took an outside force for them to get it. Now, how much better would that system and program have been if they would have said, hey, look, let me just stay curious about this. Let me just understand what's going on. And you're seeing the same thing happen with AI. Now, I know this is very, very different technology, so I don't want to, not consider that. But when you're looking at AI as a general use technology, like electricity, like the internet, like computers, like these are things that are general use technologies. We're having the same problem though, because you have people that are jumping on and they're saying good enough is okay, and I hate that. Like, oh, well, it helps me summarize me emails. It helps me write my emails. It's like, okay, whoop-de-doo. Like, that's great. You didn't pay attention in class when you were in middle school. So now you have to rely on AI to do this. Okay, whatever. But at the end of the day, like, what is it really helping you with? Like, what is the metric you're wanting? If a company says, I want to use AI, the first question I ask is why? It's amazing how many people don't have that next thing. Like they haven't figured it out. They're like, just, oh, well, I want to be able to have more efficiency. I want to see what this looks like. I want to see what it can do for me. Okay, great. What are you doing for your company right now, though? And if AI is going to be I had a, I can't remember what store it was. I was going to the store recently, and I think it was like buying a water or something. It was like something trivial. It was in New York, and their machines were out. Their not the electrics, just like their system. They used the POS system. And I said, look, I've got cash. Like the water's like $5, whatever. It's like I can give you 6 or 7, whatever. I'll just give it to you, and I can take the water. I'm like, oh no, we can't do that. Our system's down. And I'm like, wait a second. How are you operating as a business that your POS system's down? I literally have cash. You won't accept my money. There's a transaction that can happen. You can ring it up later and you can keep the change. You now made a little bit more money than you would have if you would have had your POS system up and running. And it's like, but I feel like companies are going to be that way with AI. AI is going to somehow mess up, go away, or make some really bad decisions for a company at some point. It's going to happen. And then they're going to have to figure out, like, how do we continue to move forward? And if they can't answer that question of how does my company exist without AI, then it's going to be very difficult for that company to exist, I think, in a future state that people actually want to do business with.
Right. Well, but I want to go back to your why thing because I think that is actually like a super important question to ask. And I think you could sit in it all day and ask it a bunch of times.
Sure.
Because you take it the very base and you're like, hey, we want our employees to use AI. Okay, cool. Why? Like, why? What is
like the PMI, right? 5 whys.
Yeah,
Like
yeah. You're like,
yeah.
well, we want them to be more efficient. I think I would follow up with that would be like, okay, and how would that happen? Like,
Yeah.
what would the output be? Because I don't think the people have stopped and gone, okay, if I'm an accountant and I make $20 an hour and I'm full time, cool. If you make me more efficient, cool. Well, why would the accountant want to use it?
Mm-hmm.
And if you ask the average business owner or manager or something that question, okay, we want, the manager shows up and they're like, we want our accounting team to use generative AI to become more efficient work. You're like, super cool. Why do you want to do that? Well, because if they were more efficient, it would be more profitable. We would, make more money. And you're like, would you?
Yeah.
Are you going to fire one of these
question.
people?
Yeah,
Are you going to do
100%.
that? Cool. Now let's switch it around. Why would they want to use it?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think the average business has actually stopped. And their knee-jerk reaction is going to be like, well, if they don't use it, somebody who uses AI is going to come in and take their job. And you're like, okay, cool. So you're threatening them. Awesome. That works well. But really sit in that for a minute and ask yourself, why would your employee want to become more efficient? What's in it for them?
100%.
And for most organizations, the answer is going to be they wouldn't want to. Like there's not a motive other than the fear of losing their job to somebody who is better, or the fear of getting fired or being seen as resistant to change or something like that. But if you're an accountant and you become twice as efficient, you suddenly have space available, and your boss is going to fill that with more work. You're not going to get paid twice as much money.
You're absolutely right. I think there's also something else that was very interesting to me, and it was something that I did not expect going into this. I actually asked, I had this a very similar conversation with a few people, and I asked them, said, well, if AI could take a lot of these redundant things away from you, could kind of remove Excel, all the different copy and paste procedures that you need, would that be helpful to you? And they said, well, it wouldn't and it wouldn't. And I said, what do you mean by that? And they said, well, it would make me more efficient, but I like copying and pasting. And there are times in my day that I'm doing a lot of making very hard decisions. And there are times where I'm managing a lot of people. And the task that I have to do that allows me to copy and paste is mindless. And I can just sit there and I can just copy and paste and I can do my stuff in Excel because I know it. I don't have to learn something new, and it's mindless. I don't have to think about it. And that allows me to get some of the kind of decompression time that I need to really help me move through my day or my week. And I had to sit with that because, again, I'm not that way. I feel like if there's a better way to do something, I'm all about let's getting more things more efficient. So I had to take back and I had to really kind of sit in that for a minute. And I had to really think, okay, wait a second. Wow, this is not something that I would go to, but it sounds like there is some trends here that sometimes people actually like the kind of ordinary mundane type of task. And if you take that away from them and you're only giving them very strategic type thinking, critical thinking roles, we get into a decision fatigue where now are we going to be able to make quality decisions, or are we going to be able to do quality performance? You think like Jeff Bezos, he talks about he only makes decisions between 10 and 10:30 in the morning. Why
Right.
is that? Because he understands that. But yet we're saying that, and I agree with you. I think that the tendency that at least in the metrics that I've seen so far is it exactly that. You have more time for this now. Let's fill your plate with other stuff. It's not, hey, go go get a tea time in the afternoon. Spend out with more time with your family. Let's go. Hey, let's go get some drinks with the coworkers. Like it's not that, and it should be because that actually is where a lot of these innovation and creative ideas happen. But we don't do
Yeah.
that. So
Well, and the thing I think people are missing is the like, if you don't answer that question, why would they want to? And
sure,
you come up, and it's going to force you to come up with something that either as a boss, an owner, a manager, sounds insanely selfish.
sure,
We're going to give them
sure.
more stuff to do. Cool. And will that doing that more stuff inspire the employee to figure this out and to become more efficient? And the answer can't be yes, or I'll fire them, or yes, or they'll be replaced by
Yes,
somebody who wants to, because that is not taking human psychology into the mix. Cool. Again, so fear, the fear of that will be a motivator at some point, but just understand that groups of people who are ruled by fear are not happy,
hmm
productive, like groups of people. They're not great teams. They're not great places to work. It's not a great culture.
yep,
And what you see is the way I think I don't know what book it came from, but it's kind of like if you want your employees to treat your customers great, you need to treat them great. And the way you treat your employees is the way they're going to treat your customers. Well,
yeah,
let's just take that. If you instill fear as the core motivator of your team doing what you want them to do, how do you think they're going to treat your customer?
yeah,
Like there are fear-based mentality.
hmm
You're going to see if you ever want to see like Lord of the Rings, like go to a company that just got bought and is going to
yeah,
be merged together, and instant scarcity was built in that there are redundant people here who will
yes,
not be with us. And you
100%.
will see an instant shift from collaboration to claiming the higher
hmm
ground and the value to protect themselves, and the
Yeah,
whole place falls apart. Culture
it's
dies.
human nature. It's human
Yeah.
nature. Yeah,
And
yeah,
so that just is not, but that why I think I would go to the next step and go, okay, now as a team, like, hey, we want to use AI to engage with our customers, and it's going to make us more efficient at doing that and save us money. Same thing. Will the customer want? Why would the customer want this? And you need to come up with a great answer where they go, well, because it would give them instant access to the right answers. Okay, cool. Now we have a benchmark. Why? But
yep.
if you're just thinking like kind of selfishly, we want this because it will make us more money without going, but why would the employee want this? And why would the customer want this? And why would the vendor want this? Then you are most likely going to screw this up
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
you're
no,
just not going to index on the right things.
yeah, yeah. I always say that because it usually gets people to listen up, but it's like find your most selfish employee and then align them with the selfish nature of a company, and you'll find alignment. Because at the end of the day, we are inherently selfish beings. That's just how we are. We come into this world very selfish, and we don't
Mhm.
change all that often. But but to your point, when you have tension, when you have conflict, when you have something, we tend to go back to those very selfish fight or flight type of things. And so when I look at like selfishness as a leadership, like it's okay. There's a reason your company exists is because you thought that your company you can do something better than another company. It's so funny when I hear people say, well, I had this great idea, but it already exists. And it's like, okay, well, if that was true, if everybody just took that kind of premise on everything, no other company would exist. You wouldn't have, 20 plus different car dealerships, manufacturers. You wouldn't
Right.
have, 1,000 different, CRM systems. Like all these things it's because you create this company or you're part of this company because you have core values in some form or fashion. Maybe the culture, you don't know the culture when you first start a company, or when you first enter a company, you don't know maybe the culture, but something drew you to having alignment with those selfish traits, if you will. So yeah, I think typically selfishness is considered a negative thing. I actually think it's a positive thing when looked at properly.
Yeah, well, and to be realistic, it is just life. If you used a different phrase for it of like, everybody is inherently self-interested or like
Sure.
self-focused at the beginning, and it's not because selfish has this negative connotation. It's like, no, no,
Sure.
we evolved on purpose because if you weren't primarily first focused on yourself, you'd be dead,
Yes.
therefore not have reproduced.
Yes.
So therefore, all of us have to be like, okay, am I breathing? Am I eating? Am
Yeah.
I safe? Like this is just Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What
100%.
what the businesses don't get is a change like this if they're not proactively, casting a vision. Like you said, hey, I think everybody's starting at the bottom and coming up instead of like they're starting at the end of the data instead of
Yes.
starting at the beginning and going, hey, let's talk about why this matters and let's talk about our vision for where we're going and let's come up with some core values and let's create a process for how we're going to identify opportunities
Yeah.
and potential threats and what our process will be and how we actually do it. No, we're starting at the end of like, hey, if we could get 50% improvement, that would be great. Now go do it
Yeah.
and not casting that net. Everybody, though, what's happening, I believe, both from an org standpoint and a manager standpoint down to the middle level, is nobody's realizing that this new technology and all the buzz around it and the hype and the hate is instantly dropping everybody down a rung on the hierarchy of needs without
Mhm.
realizing, like, oh shit, we just became unsecure about our livelihood. We just became
Yeah.
unsecure about our safety. We dropped a rung and it wasn't like a proactive threat,
Yeah.
but the average employee is hearing probably like 20 threats a day to their livelihood. Every ad,
It's so
like
tough.
just think if the internet had been released that way, if the email had been released, if the mobile phone, imagine if Steve
Sure.
Jobs, instead of saying, I got this really cool phone, it's going to change your life, you'll be able to watch TV while you're on the go, you'll have the entire internet here in your hand, had instead been like, you better buy the phone because if not, you're going to be out of work and not have money to have a phone at all. Buy our phone
Yeah.
or you will be left behind.
Yeah.
That is a
It's interesting. I never
terrible.
thought about it that way. I actually really like that analogy because you could, I mean, anything like internet, same thing, right? No one really, we kind of just walked into it and there was that happened, but it was never a threat per se. Um, and I'm trying to think, because when you think about like, okay, so let's go even further back because I think maybe there was a few things like that. The tractor, obviously, right? But it was very specific around agriculture.
Hmm.
If you remember like the articles that were being passed around, which they are legit and they're not like AI generated, but there was articles about calculators when they were coming out that was going to destroy people using
Right.
or learning math. Electricity when it was first out, a lot of people didn't want to use it because they thought there were ghosts in it. And of course, like
Right.
back then, it was killing people because of DC and all that other stuff. But like, is it people? I think where I'm going with this though is that people are always find ways to put themselves in a position to not be able to own their own accountability or responsibility. I think
Right.
it's easier to say because of this I'm here. Because of this, this is what's happening to me. Because of this. And I think that as a company, it's easier to say, well, it's not us that's doing it to you, it's AI that's doing it to you. And I
100%.
think that, yeah. And so I think that as a company that really wants to understand what their workforce looks like and who they really want to be, why they exist as a company, if they can get back to, okay, without AI, without calculators, without who are us, who are we as humans? Who are we as a company that provides a culture that you want to work with, that you want to do business with? Because it does go back to what our why is. And our why
Right.
does not include AI.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, 100%. And I think where yeah, it's going to be an interesting few years because some of the challenges of it are, you brought up something earlier where you're like, I haven't seen a company that's using it that X, Y, or Z. This is one of the first technologies. Like, if you think about it, like if the farmer next to you was using a tractor, you would see him using the tractor. You would know that he was
Hmm.
using the tractor. You could
Sure,
literally
sure.
watch him use the tractor and time how he did it and index it on what your stuff and go, oh, it created the
Yeah,
usage of that technology created a public representation of it. And you could say the same for like those first companies who put their internet online or put their
sure.
website online, and you're
Yeah,
like, oh, should we get a website? Well, look at our competitor. They have a website. Look at how it's working. Look, I can
yeah,
use it. I can engage
yeah,
with it. And
yeah,
you could sign up for an email newsletter and you could go look at their social media presence and like all of these things. You could open their website on your cell phone and be like, yeah, they're mobile first.
yeah,
But for the first time, we have this rapidly advancing technology that supposedly has all this hype and all this hate, that most implementation is happening under the hood.
yeah,
And to be honest, and I'll say something so that everybody can hear it. The companies who are great at using AI, you shouldn't know that they're replacing their customer service with it because it worked like
yeah,
a human.
for
The
sure.
ones that you hear
Yeah,
the stories about where it's going wrong and it's doing the wrong thing, and well, those guys are shitty implementations of it. They're not this is how it was
hmm,
implemented the right way and it didn't work. They're this is how it was implemented wrong. But the ones that are great, the people who are using AI to do outbound right now, you don't know they're using it. They have no reason to brag.
yeah.
They're not publishing an
I
article
was gonna say they're not
telling the
publishing
world.
it. Yep,
Yeah. And
yep.
so it's really interesting that and going back to I think we're going to see more of it. They're paying to be on the sidelines. I think we're
Yeah,
actually going to see great companies that implement AI struggling a little bit to not force their either hard non-disclosure agreements, hard non-compete agreements to
hmm,
say, look, we can't let our new process leak
yeah,
because we actually want to keep this secret for as long as possible as a competitive advantage. Because if we just figured out how to drop our customer service costs down by a huge factor, we're going to keep a secret. So I think that's problem number
yeah,
one. You don't know, just assume that the best implementers are way ahead of where you think they are because you have no way to compare you versus them. And every person I've asked how good they are at AI over represents how good they are by a huge factor because they just never
I would
see.
agree with that. Yeah, I'd agree with that 100%. So I got a call from HubSpot recently. 99.99% I was talking to AI. I was asking questions just so I could kind of like mess with it a little
Mhm.
bit, and I'm pretty sure it was. The reason I say pretty sure is because, like you said, it was really good. It was
Yeah.
really good. And
And
I've been called by not so great AI outbound, and you could definitely tell. So I think you're right on, and I think that the problem with
and
AI,
voice is hard, voice and video because we can hear it, but email, forget about it. I can write some emails and I could get an
sure,
AI autoresponder because you couldn't test it. You couldn't get some of that nuance in an email and even in a
yeah,
chat that you can get on the voice to be like, oh, I can tell you mispronounced the word the wrong way. Like I ask you, there's some easy ones. Ask it for a list of options. Hey, what are the top three ways that I could do this? And if it's like one, two, three, then you know that
yes,
like they didn't program it the right way for it.
sure, sure. But let's go back, and I really want to. I think what you said about the safeguarding of the tech and the implementations that are done right. Facebook, when it first came out, was like, oh, everybody's going to be more collaborative and you're going to have more friends. And it did the opposite. I think AI is doing the same thing, that it's individualizing us as humans. And there's two ways you can think about it, going back to our ability to use it as a tool, or use it as a teammate, or use it as a replacement. I guess that's be three things.
Right.
But there's these ideas you can use it in this way. But at the end of the day, it still is you and the machine. It's not us and the machine. And that's what I'm seeing a very big difference, is that we haven't figured out a way to allow AI to be us with the machine. And it's always, how does it help me as an individual? How does it help me as a worker? How does it help me as a leader? But the question really comes down to, how does it help us as a team? How does it help us as a company? Right?
Well, think about that, and I would assume that means that in those situations, the way you figure that out is with leadership. Like I don't think
Human leadership.
yeah, an individual
Yeah.
like sales rep isn't going to be like, man, I discovered this awesome new way for me to prospect. I should get the whole team together and share it with everybody.
Hmm.
No, that's like not their job. They're going to be like, in fact, literally, I went on a hike with a B2B sales rep the other day, and she was talking to me
Okay.
about how bad the rest of the team was at doing follow up and yada, yada, yada. And I was like, well, you could build some AI agents to do all this stuff. She's like, man, like, I could go back and tell my boss this, but every time I do that, he takes the idea and gives it to everybody else. I'm like, or I could just help you build an agent for yourself and don't tell your boss about it. And I think a lot of employees right now are
Yeah.
staring at this decision, the great ones who have advanced themselves without being asked and can see where the future's going are currently going, okay, I should build for myself. Like they're going to take Tim Ferriss's 4 hour work week to an
Yeah.
extreme. And they're going to
Yeah.
be like, okay, I can navigate so I can work from home. Cool. I'm going to build my own agents that act as me. Awesome. I'm going to get 4 jobs. I'm going to have all these agents doing this stuff. I'm going to become a contractor. I'm going to run this way, or I'm going to go work for a company that will be more progressive. But if I give up what I just learned to my manager, either they're going to shut me down and say no and tell me I can't use it anymore, and I don't want that. So I'm going to ask for forgiveness later, or they're going to take the idea and give it to everybody else. And the gains I was receiving in maybe my job got easier without anybody knowing. And I'm just, like going back to that copy and paste person. I
Sure.
the difference between an employee who sits at a desk and their job just got easier, so now they feel guilty or they're worried they're going to get in trouble. And so they're like, hey, I need this time back. I'll keep copy and pasting, or I'm going to have to fill it with something
Yeah.
else. And me, who's like, hey, this is super cool. I just saved 3 hours a day, so I went for a walk while my
Yep.
AI was doing its job and went outside. And I got the same release from my
Hmm.
meetings. I just went for a walk, but nobody's going, wait a second, you went mountain biking at 3 p.m. instead of being at work? I'm like, yeah, my AI was doing the job, so I went
Yep.
biking.
Yeah.
But I think that lack of leadership of saying, guys, if you want your team, if you're listening to this and you're a manager, or you're an owner, or you're whatever, you're going to have to get your team together and say, not just, hey, how could we implement AI to make it more efficient without going, why would my team want to do that? And if you are dumb enough to walk into a meeting and push something out there without knowing the negative impact on your team, you're, I
Yeah.
guess, just normal corporate America. Because almost every
Yeah.
manager who brings in is like, this is going to be so
Unfortunately.
great. And the whole team's like, great for you.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
better have answered that question. But the question you should be asking is, what are we going to unlock that we couldn't do before that we can now do today? And that is a much more expansive thing where you're setting this new tone. For instance, hey, before we couldn't provide one on one mentorship to our students in our program because that would have been crazy labor intensive. But if we could unlock AI to give personal mentorship to these students,
Sure.
we just expanded our capabilities. Hey, that's awesome. That's the same team doing more, not just so the company makes more money, but so the better values provided to our customer and our client base. That's like big mission, big like vision, like, hey, we have core values. We're trying to make the world better. But most of AI right now sounds like a how do we make more money? And
Yeah.
I don't think that the average management team has heard that from their employees' perspective, going, that sounds like the most selfish thing we've ever heard. You just want us to make more money. You haven't told us what's going to happen to us. Like, yeah, it's I think we've entered a new realm of, what's it called when yeah, like tone deafness. We'll go with that.
Well, I think, again, when you look at I always try to like think, what is it like with AI? What is it like without AI? And I don't think AI has done anything other than just accelerated the reveal of a lot of these really negative and bad tendencies of leadership in companies. And when you give people data and you give them the right data at the right time and you give them an empowerment to understand upskilling and how to kind of take ownership of their jobs, and you give them tools that allow them to do that, whether it's AI or something else, it actually you get better results holistically. But the problem with that is that, going back to something earlier you said, and I think this is true outside of AI, is that we are trying to define impact before we define the thing that gives us the impact. And we haven't done that at a personal level with our teams. We haven't taken the decisions that we make as a leader and understand how those decisions, regardless of technology, impacts the people that work for us. And if we can do that first, then when we add AI, it just accelerates that goodness. It accelerates all those underlying positive cultural effect that happens. Culture is not a end result, it's an ingredient. And so when we have the right ingredients and when we accelerate those ingredients because of AI or other technology, I mean, at the end of the day, AI is great, AI is bad, AI is good. Depends on, how you look at it and what your perspective is and what you're trying to do with it. But there's going to be something after AI as well. We have no idea what it is. And so
Right.
we can't put all our eggs in one basket. We can't say that we have to put so much focus on AI that it becomes who we are. We are who we are because of us, because of humans, because of people, not because of technology. We also have to we can't forget that technology, the definition, going back to definitions, definition of technology is the application of knowledge. We forget that that's what that means. We think of
Right.
technology, we think of something digital, but it's
Mhm.
not. The wheel itself was technology. It accelerated things. It gave us the ability to
Right.
move something from A to B faster. We could do the same thing on foot, but we're faster because of technology. AI is the same thing. AI is more knowledge and how we apply that knowledge. And so you can have technology success or you can have technology failure depending on how you apply those things. And I think that we have to just apply the knowledge of our people and our leadership before we can actually apply other technologies that sit on top of that.
Yeah, and I think to kind of sum that up, and my perspective on it is kind of like I think we maybe don't realize that life is about balance,
Sure.
progression is about balance, and we as organizations, at least for the past, I don't know, 100, 200, 500 years, have been balancing human and, like machine together.
Sure. In
It's
some form or fashion.
since
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
Industrial Revolution, we've been
Yeah.
balancing these two.
Yep.
And when a new technology comes into play, when a new machine comes into play, and the default is to lean more and put more weight on that side, it will get us out of balance unless we put an equal weight on the other side. And this side over here, like making forcing that goes back to our you don't do it unless you have to,
Sure.
right? Zoom comes out, you slam it down, but you don't think about the human side to make sure, yes, but this also still needs to feel human. And you want this like balance. And when the default, the easy mode will be, well, we have more data now. So let's use data in making decisions. Yes, but to balance it, we're going to need extra psychology to
Right.
understand why the data looks this way and what the data means from a humanistic standpoint. But no, nobody talks about that part of
So
applying
true.
extra psychology. So if you
Yeah.
bring AI in the mix and automation and machine learning and all this stuff, there's going to be so much talk and drive on that side that if you wanted to actually come to the right answer, where you don't have a meltdown, you don't harm your customer, you don't harm your employees, you don't harm whatever, you're going to have to apply equal power on the psychology side of like, what will this mean to them? How might they think about it? Heaven forbid, empathy, right? The opposite of data is empathy, where you're like, cool, we got this data, but we need some empathy here to understand, well, why? How will this impact? How do we make sure that everybody's here with us? How do we make sure they're all together? But that is not talked about anywhere. I've yet to hear almost anybody talk about empathetical. We've talked about like, I think there's like some words around proper AI usage and like all that
Mhm.
stuff, but empathetical AI enablement of like, hey, but did you think about the team? Did you think about the customer? Or did you just think about money? Because
Yeah,
right,
what's your inputs and outputs of it? Yeah, and I also think so when we talk about like decision making, because at the end of the day, that's what you're looking at. Like, why are you using AI? You're using AI to make a decision for you. And so, what is that decision? Does it have an emotional, intelligent aspect to that process? Can AI have an emotional, intelligent metric? Well, it can if we give it to it. If we premise and we prompt it properly, it absolutely can consider those things. Now, the question is, can it be emotional resilient? And I think the answer is no. I think that is something that is very us and not very machine. But who, like, you can't. So a decision is interesting because you never know if the decision is going to be a good decision or a bad decision until after you make it.
Right.
That's the interesting thing about decisions is you don't know. You can predict, and you can go crazy with the data, and you can put the empathetical data. You could put emotional intelligent aspects in it. You can do all these things, but at the end of the day, it matters about how you respond or react to the outputs, whether it's AI or humanistic driven. And I think that's the important piece that we have to understand that AI maybe gets us there faster, but does it get us there better? I think that is the real question. Is it better for us? Is the thing we're doing, the output that we're trying to get to, maybe it's faster, and maybe faster is better in some circumstances, but are we better because of it? And are we
Right.
able to actually improve ourselves, our leadership, our emotional intelligence, our decision maturity, all of those things? Can we actually become better because of it? The answer is no, or I don't know. We need to probably rethink how we're using AI or technology. If the answer is yeah, I think so, then that's a great start.
Right. And I think you actually hit something really hard right before that. That was, um, could it be, I guess, if you gave it to it? So you go back to that same thing and say, hey, is AI just going to make our organization more efficient or is it going to make it more effective? The answer is, well, it depends. Did you
Mhm.
try to get it to make you more efficient? Or did you
Yeah.
try to get it to make you more effective? Hey,
Yes.
is AI going to make this process more empathetical? I don't know. Was that your goal?
Yeah.
And I think that's what's lost in almost every implementation I've seen of AI so far has been this understanding of it's a tool that you're guiding.
Yeah.
How elegant was the solution you dreamed up?
Yeah.
Because it's responding to you. Like if I go and put in a prompt, I'm like, write an email to my kid,
Yeah.
and it comes out mean, and I go, man, AI is really mean. It's like, no, no, my prompt,
Yeah.
it's responding to my prompt, and therefore I could make it nice or mean or funny or whatever.
Mhm.
It's responding to the way I designed it. But that
Yeah.
goes back to your, if you were focused on the output and working backwards instead of going, wait, 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 we have some guiding principles here, guys. Like we're trying to create an experience that looks like this, and this. Therefore,
Yeah.
when we design the way that our team and AI are collaborating, we want it to do these certain things. That's almost nobody in when they're mapping AI right now. They are like laser focused on make it efficient.
I would go as far as even regular implementations as well.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
even like you bring a new CRM and the sales managers decided this is going to give them so much more visibility in X, Y, and Z. Almost nobody goes, hey, but also, we're triangulating here between the customer, the sales rep, and the sales manager. And did we make sure that we mapped out what success looked like
Mhm.
in each of their perspectives and found a balance? No, you're 100% right. You're like, no, whoever bought it and is driving it said, this is what I want. And
Yeah.
then you look at failure and you're like, so why isn't the team using it? And you're like, because you didn't index that in of
Yeah.
what would get them wanting to use it. You used fear. How are we
So
going to
true.
beat them into using this?
Yeah.
AI is going to be no different.
Yeah.
Well,
I
man, this
agree.
was awesome. Like,
Yeah, it
certainly a
was.
wandering conversation. And I think if you're listening to this, like, this should give you pause to go, we have a lot more questions that we should be asking ourselves, our
Yeah.
organization. Like, we don't, for the most part, like AI technology today, this is like what, like August 14th, 2025,
Yeah.
it's fairly advanced in what it can do.
Yeah.
It can be an extremely elegant solution if you come up with an elegant plan.
Agreed.
But most
So true.
orgs need to be focused back on like, hey, how are we talking about this? Hey, like, how are we getting our employees excited about this? Hey, how are we motivating them to want it, not to run?
Yeah.
Is this all stick and no carrot? Like, how are we having adult conversations about what the world might look like after? Like
Yeah.
all that stuff that's just normal, like you said, any technology, any change,
Yeah.
yeah, that's where we're stuck at. So you should be walking away from this going, I got a bunch more questions to ponder about.
Yeah.
Like while ChatGPT is writing my email, go for a walk. Ask yourself, like, how are you going to get your employees excited about this?
Yeah. I 100% agree.
Well,
Ryan, it's
thank
been
you,
a
Chris.
pleasure,
Yeah,
man. Yeah, so
as
much, man.
always, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, thanks, Stan. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, bye.
Chris just exposed the biggest lie in AI adoption. And if you're still focused on the technology instead of the psychology, you're setting yourself up for failure. Here are the three biggest takeaways. First, Stop asking, did you use AI? And start asking, why would my team want to use this? Second, the best AI implementations are invisible. If you can tell someone's using AI, they're probably doing it wrong. And third, AI adoption isn't a technology problem. It's a change management problem that requires addressing human psychology first. Chris Donaleski runs AI Advisory Group and specializes in operational efficiency and digital readiness during critical organizational transitions. His perspective on why deals are stalling and proposals are being ghosted should be a wake-up call for every leader trying to implement AI. What hit me hardest was Chris's point about psychological safety. AI adoption is dropping employees down Maslow's hierarchy of needs without anyone realizing it. When you hear threats about AI replacing jobs 20 times a day, you're no longer thinking about self-actualization. You're back to worrying about basic security and survival. The why would employees want this question is going to save you from every implementation disaster. If your answer is because they'll get fired if they don't, you're building a fear-based culture that will ultimately fail. But if you can answer because it expands what we can do for our customers, now you're talking about mission and vision instead of threats. Thanks for listening. And remember, elegant AI solutions require elegant planning. The technology responds to your vision, so make sure your vision includes the humans who have to live with the results. I'll see you next time on The Future of Work with AI.